You know, when you look at Donald Trump's foreign policy lately, it can seem, well, chaotic. But what if it isn't? What if there's a method to the madness? Today, we're digging into a really provocative theory from our source material that asks, is Trump trying to break the world order on purpose as part of some grand strategy? It really all kicks off with this. Trump's language about the new war in Iran is dialed up to 11. I mean, he's promising a swift victory, sure, but he's also threatening to bomb them back to the Stone Ages. Now, our source points out something interesting. That kind of super aggressive talk, it often signals that a war is actually not going as well as you'd think. And then there are these weird signs that things are about to get really serious. The source talks about something called the Pizza Index, a huge spike in late-night pizza deliveries to the Pentagon. It's this old tell. It happens right when they're pulling all-nighters, planning a major operation. Couple that with reports of empty bars in D.C. and a huge bet on a prediction market saying an invasion is coming. And you can feel the tension. Okay, but from any conventional military perspective, this makes absolutely zero sense. I mean, for decades, pretty much everyone from the Pentagon to independent think tanks has said the exact same thing. A full-on ground war in Iran would be a disaster, a catastrophic, unwinnable mistake. And here's a look at exactly why it's considered such a bad idea. You're talking about the Zagros Mountains. That's a perfect playground for guerrilla warfare. Then there are these huge deserts that are just a logistical nightmare. The country is simply way too big to occupy, and right now, the U.S. has only about 50,000 troops in the whole region. The math just isn't there. So yeah, the consensus view is that this is a recipe for absolute disaster. The U.S. probably loses the war, its global influence collapses, and the petrodollar, the very system that props up the U.S. economy, goes down with it, sparking a global depression. And the really head-scratching part? Right before all this, Trump was picking fights with his NATO allies, the very people you'd think he'd need on his side. It looks like total chaos. And this is where we get to the heart of the theory. You have two ways to look at this. The moron thesis says Trump is just an impulsive guy who's accidentally crashing the American empire. But the genius thesis asks a wild question. What if he's doing it all on purpose? Okay, and this is where the theory just flips the whole chessboard over. It wants us to think about a crazy idea. What if all these mistakes, the unwinnable war, the collapsing economy, aren't problems to be avoided? What if? That's the whole point. All right, so here's how the theory says this plan would actually work. A war in Iran instantly closes the Strait of Hormuz. It's like the world's most important energy jugular. About 20% of all global oil flows through there. This would be an absolute catastrophe for places like Europe and East Asia. Japan, for instance, gets 75% of its oil from the Middle East. But listen, this isn't just about oil and gas. That same shipping route is a highway for critical supplies for, well, everything. You cut off key ingredients for fertilizer, you threaten the food supply. You cut off materials like helium and sulfur needed for semiconductors, boom, the tech industry grinds to a halt. It would trigger a total meltdown of the global supply chain. So if you follow the logic of this theory, the global chaos isn't some unfortunate side effect. No, it's the goal. It's like a controlled demolition of the old system of global trade, all designed to make way for a totally new structure of world power. And in this new world, the power map gets totally redrawn. It's not about who has the biggest army or the most money anymore. It's about one thing: resilience. Europe, East Asia, they're incredibly fragile, totally dependent on imports. But North America and Russia, they've got the energy, food, and water they need. In a world of scarcity, they become the new poles of power. But wait a minute, what about America's Achilles heel? That massive, eye-watering $39 trillion national debt. Wouldn't a global collapse just destroy the U.S. economy? Well, here's the craziest part of the theory. It argues this crisis actually flips that weakness into a strength. Suddenly, all those countries that hold U.S. debt, Europe, Asia, they desperately need North America's resources to survive. So they have no choice but to keep financing that debt to ensure the lights stay on. That debt becomes a leash, a tool of control. So you might be thinking, where does an idea this radical even come from? Well, according to our source, the playbook for this was already written by Vladimir Putin with the war in Ukraine. This strategy is tied to a Russian idea called the Third Rome. The basic concept, which you see in the writings of thinkers like Alexander Dugin, is pretty simple. The liberal West is decadent and collapsing, and when it finally does, a strong, traditional, unified Russia will be there to pick up the pieces and lead the world. So the strategy, as the theory lays it out, looks something like this. First, you use a long war to unite your country and rebuild your industry.
Then, you lock down internal stability with nationalism. You build up a fortress Russia that doesn't need anyone else for food or energy. And then, you just wait for the rest of the world to fall apart, and you emerge to lead what's left.
And so America's answer to Russia's Third Rome, according to this theory, is something called the Technate. It's basically the exact same playbook, just with a North American twist. The idea is to consolidate the entire resource-rich continent, from Greenland to Panama, into a self-sufficient superstate that can ride out the global storm and come out on top.
And this table really just lays it all out, side by side. On one side, you have the old New World Order, based on global finance, consumerism, and America as the world's cop. And on the other, you have this new Trump World Order that throws all that out. The focus shifts to an economy of hard resources and manufacturing, a culture of Christian nationalism, and a foreign policy of Fortress America.
So, to wrap this all up, the theory argues that what we're seeing isn't about saving the world order America built after World War II. It's about managing its controlled demolition so that a new, stronger, more self-sufficient America can rise from the rubble.
It's a wild theory for sure, but it leaves us with this pretty unsettling question. Is all this global chaos just a bug in the system? Or, as this theory suggests, is it slowly becoming a feature? Definitely something to think about.